Today's talk is called Discover the Wonder of Our Being, and I would like to start with a scripture from the 14th chapter of John, the Gospel of John. Jesus says, "Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. For I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I come again and will receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know the way." 14th chapter, John, the first 4 verses. And where I go, you know the way. You know, John's gospel contains many sayings that thrill as well as challenge the metaphysician in each of us. We claim Jesus as our way shower, and yet often the way he shows seems difficult or frankly impossible. So let's consider what he might be meaning when he says, "And where I go, you know the way." How do I know where Jesus goes? How do I know the way? What and where is the path? How do I know if I'm on it? And if I find myself straying off the path, how do I get back on? Well, there probably isn't a single answer to these great questions, but today I'd like us to consider this. The way to go where Jesus goes is by discovering the wonder of our being. Now, do any of us have the slightest idea what a marvelous, beautiful, unique, and precious being we each are? Well, first let's consider the miracle that we get to be beings at all. Consider the vastness of the physical universe, which is at least 92 billion light years in diameter, and by some calculations, up to 10 times bigger than that. That in all of this vastness, you and I get to be individualized, self-conscious, walking and talking packets of what Carl Sagan called animated stardust. When the universe began some 13.8 billion years ago, all of what we see now or infer across those billions and billions of light years was packed into a tiny, unimaginably dense and hot point. And as that infinitesimal version of the universe began to expand outward and slowly cool off, over billions of years, it eventually gave rise to the Milky Way galaxy, and of course to the other 2 trillion galaxies scattered throughout the universe. And as the stars of our galaxy slowly consolidated into their various sizes and temperatures, this particular one, the one that lights and heats our days, classified by cosmologists as a yellow dwarf star, gathered extraneous material into orbit around itself. And eventually this material consolidated into a bunch of planets, asteroids, comets, and other formations, all now orbiting the star, going around and around and around in the same direction. One of those, as we know, the third large-sized object from the sun, evolved over billions of years to have a thin but substantial atmosphere, significant amounts of water, and a surface temperature range that was moderate relative to all the other planets. And around 4 billion years ago, this environment came into a configuration that animated some of its elements into life. And then these first single-cell beings began to evolve and spread, and eventually showed up in the form of human beings, you and me. So let's begin exploring the wonder of our being by appreciating the utter miracle that we have being at all. But wait, there's more. Of all the life forms that have roamed the planet over the past 4 billion years, biologists estimate that 99% of them have gone extinct. This includes at least 20 other species of humans, all of which differentiated themselves from our hominid ancestors, but didn't make it past the Ice Age. Another perspective on the wonder of our being here at all, scientists estimate that even with all the species that have come and gone in the past 4 billion years, there are at least 9 million still cohabitating the planet with us. And of these 9 million species, ours, Homo sapiens is the only one gifted with the 12 powers identified by Unity's co-founder Charles Fillmore. We are the only ones endowed with a consciousness powerful enough to be able not only to identify and differentiate ourselves from all the other living creatures on Earth, but also to imagine stuff that doesn't even exist and then invent ways to bring them into being. This is not to say that other creatures with the same gifts don't exist in those trillions of other galaxies spread across the universe. It's hard to believe that we're the only ones. It's hard to believe that first life and then conscious life hasn't also appeared on other planets exactly the same way as we came to be here. But that just increases the sense of wonder that we got to be here on this planet at this time in the great ongoing flow of evolution. Now consider the chances that you yourself would get here at all. For most of the existence of our species, approximately 300,000 years, life was short and full of daily existential dangers. Most of us died in the first several years of life. Until the 20th century, we had a 1 in 4 chance of dying in infancy, and fully 46% of us didn't make it to adulthood. Today, by contrast, the global infancy mortality rate is under 3%. That shift in global human health has coincided with a remarkable exponential increase in per capita wealth. Not only do we live longer and healthier lives, we are also richer than any human beings have ever been at any other time in our history. These are just some of the external markers of the wonder of our being. What about the internal indicators? Well, the spiritual breakthroughs of Moses, Jesus the Christ, the Buddha, Zoroaster, Plato, Lao Tzu, and the authors of the Upanishads are no more older than 2,500 years. The awakening on a mass basis of individual consciousness, that is, awareness that I am this particular human, different from all others, is only 500 years old. New Thought Christianity is just over 100 years old. We have been blessed with discovering a very recent tradition of spiritual realization that has given us practical tools to permit us to experience the truth of the indwelling Christ in every moment. We were not only born with a generous intuition to seek spiritual attunement, but we also came here with the determination to find one another, to congregate with others similarly inspired to experience our oneness with all reality, to discover in our community with one another the peace that passes human understanding. Through the miracle of the internet, we all of us have access to the writings and sayings of all the wisdom traditions of human history. We can read translations not only of the Bible, but of the Quran, the Vedas, the Tao Te Ching, the Guru Granth Sahib of the Sikhs, and the Bhagavad Gita, but also of all the mystical interpretations of these sacred scriptures. We can read the so-called apocryphal Gospels, the Talmud and the Kabbalah, the Hadith and the Sufis, the commentaries of Shankara and Nargujana, of Chuang Tzu, and the authors of the many sutras of Zen Buddhism. Not only these, we can discover the traditions of the Khoisan of the Kalahari, the Aboriginals of Australia, the Inuit of northern Canada and Greenland, and the Teleuts and Saka of Siberia. My friends, we are the richest people on the planet, both inside and out. And this is just the beginning of the wonder of our being. For the true and ever-present source of our prosperity is our oneness with the creator of our being. And in this moment, we live, move, and have our being in God, we perpetually endowed with access to everything we need to manifest the particular person that each of us was born to be. When I realize this truth, I find that I'm living confidently, serenely, and joyfully, ready to be content with whatever it is I choose to manifest today. I find that I am willing to live peaceably with the incessant chatter of my mind, even with the erroneous thoughts that seek to derail me from the awareness of my eternal oneness with the Father. And over the years of concentrated spiritual practice, drawing upon the billions of years of evolution that have led to me and to my having everything I need to offer my own individual contribution to the ongoing unfolding of consciousness, I'm only now coming to appreciate the utter joy of being alive in this particular version of the allness of God. For the greatest wonder is our utter uniqueness. Even as we share our physical composition with the primordial elements of the universe, even as we share the characteristics of being alive with all living creatures, and even as we share our human nature with all of those of our species, still in all, there is only one person like you, like me. We can all tell stories of how this uniqueness is manifested throughout the courses of our lives, and yet we often fail to appreciate the beauty and grace of what we have done, of how we have loved, even of our mistakes and our blind spots. In this phase of the evolution of consciousness that we are embodying, we can seem stuck with a critical mind and with fear and doubt in our emotional bodies. These often threaten to overwhelm us, to drag us away from our focus on the indwelling Christ that animates our appreciation of our being alive in this place and this time. And so we practice with patience and determination, the golden key, returning our focus to God as soon as we notice that we have allowed our attention to drift back to the conditions of life. Perhaps you have noticed that the evidence of the success of this spiritual practice often manifests in what the mind might label little things. But in God, there are no little things. Back in February, when I drove over to Las Vegas to visit friends for a long weekend, I had a couple concrete reminders of the wonder of my being. They both happened the day I left Vegas to drive over to Paso Robles. I was staying with a couple of longtime friends that I hadn't seen for 6 years or so. We had several days to catch up with each other, and I had a thoroughly wonderful time sharing with them all the things I'd been doing and hearing about their activities. We were quite open to also talk about our fears and the mistakes we'd made, about old age and death. Such intimate sharing was a true blessing. On that Monday morning, as we were saying our goodbyes, my friend Frank, whom I've known for 30 years, said to me, "Marty, you really seem to be at peace with yourself. I'm so glad to see you happy and at ease." As you might imagine, I was a bit surprised by his observation, but also quite pleased. This is a man with whom I'd shared a lot of my life, who's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of me, and whose morality and integrity I have always deeply admired. So when he said that, I felt in my heart the very truth of it. Little did I know that I was soon to have the opportunity to have an intense reminder of how true it was. As we went out to say goodbye and I got into my car and backed out of the driveway, Frank pointed out that there was a bit of an oil slick under where my car had been parked. So I got out, we opened the hood, felt the dipstick, and I noticed that the oil was just down to the edge of acceptable range. So I decided, what the heck, when I get gas for the vehicle, I'll also get a quart of oil. And so I stopped a few miles on the road, gassed up, got a quart of oil, put it into the engine crankcase, and took off. And I'm driving along on Interstate 15, heading toward California for about 60 miles, and got to the agricultural inspection station. And as I was pulling up, slowing down, all of a sudden I noticed smoke billowing out of the front part of my car. And of course, my heart seized up. It's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? So, of course, they waved me through the ag station, and I pulled over immediately and opened the hood, and there's smoke billowing out. And what did I discover? I discovered I forgot to put the oil cap back on the opening for where the oil goes into the engine. And there was oil all over the back of my engine and smoke everywhere. Well, my immediate feeling was panic and fear. It's like, oh my gosh, can I even drive this car? Here I am in the middle of the desert. What am I going to do? But you know, a funny thing happened. That fear and panic died down immediately. And it came into my mind, the realization that I have plenty of resources to solve this problem. So I grabbed a wad of paper towel that I had taken from the gas station when I got the oil and put it in, and I just wadded it up and stuck it into the opening of the crankcase. And it occurred to me that I have this wonderful little instrument called a cell phone, and that the cell phone had the opportunity to find information for me. And so I found the phone number to the Toyota dealer in Barstow, which was the next big city that I was heading to. And as I got back on the road, I called them, and a nice young lady said, "Let me go see if we have this part. I'll call you right back." And I'm driving along, and there's no smoke coming out of my engine, so I'm confident that this is going to work. And a half hour later, she calls me back and says, "You know, sir, we don't have that part. Our dealership down in Victorville has it, but it might take us a while to get it here." And I said, "Well, you know, I'm heading from Barstow to Bakersfield." She goes, "Let me call them." And so she called the Toyota dealership in Bakersfield, and it turned out they had the oil cap that I needed. And so I was able to drive for 3 hours from the border of Nevada and California over to Bakersfield and buy myself an oil cap, put it on, and everything was fine. So this is just a little story of how I had the opportunity to experience the wonder of my own being. The spiritual practice that I've engaged in for years and years allowed the Christ in me to bring me peace and confidence in a moment where 2 or 3 years ago, I would have just felt panic and fear. I did feel panic and fear, but they died down immediately. Now, I know this is no life and death story, but few things in our daily lives actually are. And here, now, is always the place to find this wonder of our being in whatever is going on with us right now. So we started today's discussion with what Jesus had to say in that 14th chapter of John. "Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you, and will receive you unto myself, that where I am, you may also be. And where I go, you know the way." My friends, we know the way. No matter what has come before us, either in all the years that the universe has been evolving, or in all the years of our own lives, we are always only in the body we are and in the moment we have. And in this body and in this moment, we always have everything we need to feel and express the wonder of our being. God has poured billions of years of perfection into each of us, shaping with determination and tenderness the unique version of himself that we all are. As Suzanne suggested to us in the meditation, we have only to close our eyes and enter into the quiet place that lives between each beat of our heart, to bless and be swept up by the wonder of our own being. For the wonder of our being is the wonder of God's entire universe, pulsating in us with love and joy in every moment of our lives. Where I go, you know the way. And where I experience this true wonder of being alive, being in this particular body, being in this particular time, I am humbled, and yet geysers of joy erupt in my heart for sharing this truth with the wonder of God's being. So let's seal the truth of this experience right here, right now, by singing number 340, "I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart." Oh, what a joy to be you, to be me, to be the divine, expressing in time and space. And for this marvelous, awesome, incomprehensible truth, we say, thank you, God. Amen.